Hey, everybody. Lieutenant Joe here for the Blue Heart Podcast, the voice of the men and women of law enforcement. You know, the heart, soul, mind, and body of law enforcement. That's who we're trying to cover here, right? We're out there doing a hard job, police work, corrections work, first responders, military, the hero class of people out there in our nation who do the right thing every single day, sacrifice, and try and be better all the time. And that's the idea. So that's the purpose of our podcast here with our interviews, is that we always want to be learning, right? I teach law enforcement officers across the country, and I have to tell you, every time I teach a class, I learn something from the students in the class. We can all learn, and that's the purpose of what we're doing here with the Blue Heart Podcast and our interview series. So in a minute, I'm going to bring up Mike Rayburn. Mike is a very, very experienced individual. He has touched many different areas of law enforcement and expertise, and we'll see exactly what he's up to here. So he's got a couple of books out on Blue 360 Media, which is the leader in law enforcement and legal publications across the United States. They're my publisher for my book, The Interview, and the upcoming book, The Investigation. But Blue 360 Media, go find them online, go take a look. If you want to learn something, there's tons and tons of authors out there. We're going to bring a lot of them to you so that we all learn together. But Mike has a couple of books that are out there on Blue 360, Advanced Patrol Tactics and Advanced Vehicle Stops. Now, in this day and age, we all know that the world is not our best friend anymore in law enforcement. I have never seen so many ambushes on law enforcement officers. I have never seen so many officers attacked randomly for no reason whatsoever. And understanding how to do the proper kind of a car stop, how to protect yourself, and doing other things in an advanced way, not just what we were taught in the academy. And that's where I think Mike can actually help us here. So, Mike, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. So, listen, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? I know how experienced you are and everything, but let everybody else out there know.
First, I'd like to say I listened to your intro there, and you talked about learning and how we always have to learn. You're absolutely right. Every time I teach a class, my goal is to learn something new in each class every time I teach, and I usually do. I may have nothing to do with law enforcement, but I still learn something new every day, and that's, for us in law enforcement, we're always learning. There's nothing set in stone here. We always have to learn. But I actually started my law enforcement career back in 1977 as a military police officer in the United States Army. I did 3 years in the military. I got out. I worked some retail security jobs. I worked as a private investigator for Pinkertons. I got involved with the federal system as a federal corrections officer. Left that, and I joined the Saratoga Springs Police Department in 1986. And basically, we're a tourist town. We're a racetrack town. And crack cocaine came to Saratoga Springs in 86. I had experience working undercover in the military, and I got hired to work undercover. Drove a taxi cab for 6 months, made a lot of felony arrests, and just got involved in training from that point forward.
That's amazing. And it's interesting you talk about Saratoga Springs. A friend of mine and I, we were looking at property in the Adirondacks, right? We're going to go up there. So we decided we'll stop in Saratoga and have a little dinner. Well, we stop in, and it was the biggest party town I have ever seen in my life, going wild. So we decided we would enjoy some adult beverages and a fine aromatic tobacco product as we walked around. And we visited some of the different establishments. We ended up staying overnight, which was really excellent. The city was really a lot of fun. It was clean. It felt safe. It was really great. But we go to sleep, and I wake up in the morning to the sound of this guy blowing one of them trumpets. Dun, 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 dun. And we realized it was the last day of the racing season. And they had these guys going hotel to hotel at 6 o'clock, blowing the horns, I guess, for the big festival or something. But it was really cool. We did sleep for a few more hours after that because, I was a little tired after the night before. So that's my experience with Saratoga Springs. It's a wonderful place. And when you say crack cocaine arrived in 86, you're right. I came on the job in 86, and 86, 87, 88, it was crazy until heroin rolled in and really destroyed things. So what I want to ask you, Mike, let's talk about your 2 books from Blue 360 Media. How long have you been writing?
Over 20 years now. First started with a few articles, and then I realized I was big into the vehicle stops and teaching vehicle stops, and there really wasn't a lot of material out there for that. So that's why I put that book together as a manual for for different vehicle stops. Tractor trailer. How do you stop a tractor trailer? And there's all kinds of theories out there. And basically, it's a big car, and you have to think of it as a big car. But there's a lot of specifics around it where you have to blind spots and how to approach it. I don't know how many times I've been driving down the highway going to a class, and you see a trooper standing on the truck, or the railings of the truck, and that's a big no-no for safety.
Right. So while you're on that, why don't you give us some safety tips if you're pulling over trucks? Because I know we had major highways going through my town, and every once in a while you're stopping a truck, and it's a car, but it's a gigantic thing. You don't have view. So what would you tell the cops out there?
The biggest thing is find a safe spot for you and for him to pull over to. You're talking a lot of weight with the truck, so he may not want to pull onto a shoulder. He may not pull over right away once you activate those lights, because he looks at the shoulder and says, it's not safe for me to pull off on a shoulder. So think of a safe spot for him or for you. If he pulls over someplace where it's not safe for you, move him to someplace that's safe. There's nothing out there that says you can't move a vehicle, tractor trailer, car, or whatever.
Outstanding. Now, when we do see a lot of tragedies with our brothers and sisters out there, when they got these trucks stopped and somebody comes along and slams you from behind, it hits the patrol car and hits the truck. Any suggestions there?
Again, it's a safe spot for you and the vehicle. So whether you're in traffic or not, move them off the traffic. If you're on a highway and it's not safe for you to be there, if it's a holiday weekend and it's very congested, or if you're in an urban area where it's very congested, move them off of that highway. There's nothing that says you can't pull them into a parking lot, to a department store or something like that.
Right, so that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Now, when
it's not lit for you, if you want to light it up more, move off to a lighted area.
See, and I think I'm going to guess right now, because I'm thinking of me when I was in patrol. You decide you're going to pull somebody over. Your thought is whatever caught your attention. Now you're going to say, okay, I'm going to pull them up. You light them up. They pull over. You get out of the car there. You're not really thinking about, you know what? Let them go another 2 miles up the road. I know there's a pull off where I can light them up and tell them, hey, pull off over there. So that's a good idea.
So actually think about your pull off spot wherever you are, whether you're stationary running radar, or you're just on the highway and you see somebody go through a stop sign. You know your patrol area, at least you should know your patrol area. Think about ahead where you can pull them off, where it's safe for that vehicle and for you.
Outstanding. And I like that too, because you know what? The other thing you mentioned there is that when you said the driver might not pull over right away because they understand. I'm not driving a 80,000 pound rig around. They are, and they're going, if I pull in that, I'm going to flip over, I'll roll over, I'll sink in the mud. So they might just keep rolling until they get to a place where they feel comfortable stopping. So you can't panic if somebody's not stopping immediately, right?
Right, especially when you're doing different vehicles like that, larger vehicles, especially for larger vehicles.
Right, and I know that most patrol officers are stopping cars, pickup trucks, cars, things like that. They're not, unless they're assigned to a truck task force or you happen to do that a lot. So those are good points for those big rigs, because some of them are dangerous. Some of them you can see they really need to be stopped. And now we have human trafficking everywhere. We got drugs all over. So I think that's an actually good point. Let's take a look to, let's go to your book now on advanced vehicle stops. Let's talk about cars and pickup trucks and all that. We've seen a lot of videos out there of people pulling over. We all know 6 feet over, cant your wheels, 6 feet back, and all that kind of thing. What is the best way to stop, say, a pickup truck where you have suspicions that the people in there might have been involved in something? You get a report, Bolo, look out for this truck involved in a robbery, and you're out there by yourself. What's the best way for me to stop that car and approach it?
Well, if somebody's involved in a robbery, obviously it's a high-risk vehicle stop. So you want to, get some backup there, first of all, if you can. But, or wait until you do get backup, whether that's from your agency or another agency. And then, provide high-risk tactics. In the book, I go into high-risk tactics a lot because they never go the way they go in training. We've all gone through high-risk stops in the academy. We've done high-risk stops maybe in service training. Most of us haven't, but they never go as planned. So you have to be fluid and keep an open mind. Things don't always go, the vehicle doesn't always stop where you want it to stop, or the passenger jumps out of the car, whatever the case may be. You have to always think fluidly and deal with that situation. So I went into high-risk stops in detail in the book just to give you some basis that this is what happens, this is how you should do it, and hopefully this is the way it goes. But again, that doesn't always go that way. I teach a high-risk vehicle stop instructor class, and they're all instructors who have taught high-risk stops, whether in service or in the academy. And when they're there with the simunitions and they're pulling people out of the cars and stuff, or calling them out of the car, it never goes as planned. And it just, right. So you have to be fluid. You have to be open to changing environment. That's right. Our biggest thing.
Now, on a car stop where maybe you're driving through your town or you're on a highway and you see a car goes by, tinted windows, and runs a stop sign, and you don't know that it's a high risk stop. You don't know they got 2 pounds of fentanyl in the trunk, but they know it, and you pull them over. Where am I doing 6 and 6 in the wheel still, or is there something new? Where's my approach? Driver side, passenger side? What do you think?
Well, in the book, I go into several different approaches or a non-approach. There's nothing wrong with calling that person out of the vehicle. They've got heavily tinted windows. They're in a crime-ridden area. Something, and your gut says there's something's not right here. We've got that sixth sense in law enforcement, and it's usually our gut saying something's wrong. And if it is saying that, there usually is something wrong. So there's nothing wrong with pulling them out of the vehicle and calling them out.
Okay.
Left side approach, you can do a right side approach. You can not approach at all. That's all in the book and how to do it.
Right. Now, when I think about it and I say, okay, if I call them out of the car, because back in the day, I got stopped and a cop would say, step out of your vehicle and come back here. And I'm saying, okay, that's good because I'm a good guy. But what if that's when I hop out and I got the AR-15 and I start lighting up the window? What am I doing as a cop when I see that person get out and there's the weapon? What am I going to do?
Well, the biggest thing is you want to get on your feet first. So if you're going to call that person out of the vehicle, you want to be out of your vehicle first when you do that. You always want to be on your feet because when you're in that vehicle, that's your only options in that vehicle. When you're out of the vehicle, you have the option of ducking back into the vehicle. You have the option of getting behind your vehicle for cover, looking for a big tree on the side of the road for cover, whatever the case may be. That's why we have to think ahead. Where's my cover going to be? Hopefully there's something other than a car there. Is there a brick wall there, or is there something that I can use for cover that's better than my car? Because really that car is not very good cover at all.
Right. Now let's think about the average car stop that we see 90% of the officers out there make. They see a violation, guy goes through the stop sign, runs a red light, he's speeding. You light them up, they start to pull over, and the officer will get out of the car to walk up there. But what you're saying is if you call them out, you should be calling them out from outside your car. Like you get out with the microphone in the speaker and say, hey, step out of the car, and then you go behind your car. Let them get out and take a look at them.
Step out of the car and go to the passenger side of your car and call them out on the PA system that way.
Okay. I like that.
Something happens, something bad. I mean, that's one of the options. You have to have a bunch of options. That's what they call it, the tactical toolbox, and different options in your tactical toolbox, and that's what you need.
Right. I think the point you're making here, though, is that you need to think ahead before we do this. We kind of get complacent in what we do. You might get assigned to, hey, the chief says there's a lot of traffic accidents at the Highway 6 and the exit. So get up there and write some tickets to slow people down. But you don't know who you're stopping. So we need to think ahead of time, which is excellent. Mike, if I was to say, give me 3 good pointers that I'm going to get out of your book, Advanced Vehicle Stops. What am I going to pull out of there that I got to go get this book now and learn? What are 3 good things in there?
High-risk stops. Again, that's something you got to go over and read and study and practice, because you do an academy and maybe do it once or twice and in service, if that, and it's not used, and they never go as planned. So you got to be rehearsed in how it's supposed to be done. Motorcycle stops. How do you stop a motorcycle? What do? Do you keep them on the bike? Do you take them off the bike? So there's options there on how to approach that. As well as your bigger vehicles, your vans. Do we want to approach a van? Do we want to call them out? So there's different options. If you are going to approach, there's different blind spots on a van, different blind spots on a tractor trailer. A lot of times in class, I'll actually have a tractor trailer in class that we practice on. And I ask the officers, you're approaching and shooting starts, where do you go? A lot of them say, well, I'll go underneath the truck. Well, what's under a truck? Do you really want to go into the unknown? Have you ever looked under a truck and see the chains hanging down and everything? Not only that, but your motions going under the truck are a lot slower than him coming at you. So it's all about having options and thinking ahead, and that's what that book gives you.
Outstanding. All right, so that's That's advanced vehicle stops from Blue 360. I think that's a great one. Now, let's switch over now to advanced patrol tactics. What is that book about, and what are we going to learn out of there?
Basically, patrol. I'm a retired patrolman. I was a patrolman my whole entire career. I love being out in the street and working the street. So it's all about what you need to know to be safe on the street. One of the big topics I go in depth in that book is contact and cover. And we all think we know what contact or cover is. One guy doesn't talk and no one covers. But there's different roles that need to be done. The other thing I get into is single officer contact and cover. What happens if you're working in a rural area? You're there out on the street by yourself and your backup is 45 minutes away. You're not really going to wait 45 minutes for your backup to get there unless it's a high risk stop or the robbery or something like that. He said, but it's grandma running the stop sign. What are you going to do? So there's contact and cover principles in there for the single officer as well.
What are some of the most dangerous things that patrol officers get involved in besides car stops? I always think of like a single person building entry. You get an alarm call. Do you always wait for the backup guy, or the building? I know people go in by themselves. Is that do you cover anything like that?
Probably the most dangerous, I say, next to vehicle stops is domestics, because if you've been on a job at all, they can be very fluid and go any way in either direction. So they're very dangerous situations, and you're dealing with highly charged emotions when you deal with domestics like that. So.
Right, and we all see a lot of times officers will get killed approaching the house where there's a domestic. Do we pull up in front of the house? Do we have lights and sirens rolling up to the house, or would you suggest something else?
No, I get into the book. You always want to park maybe a block or two away and walk up to the house. That gives you an approach to see, what's going on. You can hear what's happening, and it also gives you an opportunity to look around for cover if you need it. Is that big tree that we talked about out in front of the house? Can I use that for cover if things go south on me?
Right, because I know we see a lot. The officers go walking up to the front door. They're not looking around, and somebody pops out the upstairs window with a rifle and lays them out. I mean, it's happened here in New Jersey. It's happened over and over and over again. So I've always been a proponent of that. Turn that lights and sirens off once you get to the neighborhood where you got to be. Stop a few doors down. Listen before you jump out of the car. You might hear screaming, hollering, as opposed to just walking right up front. So I think that's good. What else are we going to learn in there? Because patrol tactics, especially advanced patrol tactics, we learn, we do, and then we get complacent. We forget. What else am I going to find in that book?
Well, I get into a lot of different shooting topics as far as low light. There's different flashlight techniques that are out there. I literally watch officer involved shootings almost on a daily basis. I get a lot of guys send them to me, or I find them online. I've done this for years, going back to when we had the VCR recorders in the cars. But the flashlight techniques that were taught either in the academy or in service, they're just not being used. So I give you options for flashlight techniques to use, and it's in the book. But the majority of the time, if you watch shootings, the flashlight, it's not even on if it's even in their hand.
Right. Well, while you're on that, what it's nighttime and I pull over a car for a violation, a regular thing. What am I going to do with that flashlight? What are you going to suggest?
Well, the minute you turn it on, you're going to give your position away. So there's options. Again, in the book, there's various options to have your light on, have your light off. Obviously, once you pull that car over, it's dark out, you want to light them up completely, but all your takedown lights, your spotlights, light them right up completely, so that you can see into that vehicle. But there's,
yeah, go ahead.
The guy we talked earlier about the tinted windows. There's a technique in that book on how to deal with tinted windows, where you hold the flashlight up to the window, and it actually lights up the whole interior.
Outstanding. So if you could give me a couple of pointers, like I'm going to buy this book now because now I listened to you and I said, I maybe I'm getting complacent. Maybe I'm not really sure of options that I can do. What do they teach me with a flashlight? It can also be used as a weapon if you needed it, right? That's what they taught me. They didn't teach me, anything about where to light things up. So give me a couple of pointers from advanced patrol tactics, things I could look forward to and say, hey, I'm going to learn something from that.
Well, there are a few chapters, several chapters in around shooting techniques. I'm a huge point shooting advocate. I know a lot of people are going to say, they don't believe in that kind of stuff, but I'm a huge point shooting advocate. I watch videos, you watch them, hardly anybody ever sees their sights. I've spoken to over 300 police officers personally who have been involved in shooting, with some of them being involved in multiple shootings. Every time I write an article on point shooting, I've written over 100 articles on various topics, but every time I write an article on point shooting, I'll get 30 or 40 emails and phone calls from guys who had been involved in a shooting, telling me that what I wrote in that article is exactly what happened to them. So if you watch the videos and you talk to police officers who have been involved in a shooting, you're going to realize that nobody uses their sights. Very, very rarely do they use their sights. Some officers will say they did, but when you break it down for them, I have one officer that there was a stairwell. A bad guy, if we can say bad guy anymore, but the subject was at the top of the stairs, and the officer said, I drew my firearm out, and I pointed at him. I remember seeing my sights, and I pulled the trigger, and he shot the person. But he was in the retention position with his handgun to his side. And it wasn't until I said, I gave him a red gun. I said, show me how you did this. So we went to the stairs in the back of the building where I was teaching. And the stairs were a little higher in his situation. But he goes, I pulled my gun out and I pointed at him. And I said, look at your gun. And he looked down at his gun and he looked back up at me. And he did that several times. He realized there's no way I could see my sights.
Right. And I'm glad to hear you say this, because in my agency, we did the twice a year qualifications, and everybody wanted the Top Gun award. You wanted to get the highest score, and you got the award at the awards dinner. You placed your shot, you held your breath, you shot down it, and I'm saying, how much is this really helping me if, God forbid, I had to shoot somebody? Because we all know that things go sideways when that happens. And we had a great leader, Captain Gary D'Esposito, God rest his soul. He went out and got some training, and he came back and goes, you know what? First of all, when we go to the range now, we're going to qualify, but we're going to roll up in a police car. We're both going to jump out. We're going to run about 100 yards. Then we're going to get behind, start dinging these, the metal things that pop up and down, so that you're breathing, your heart rate is going, and you're all in, and you can see you're trying to hit a target. Good luck with all of that, right? But he came back with point shooting. He says, you want to get that gun out up on the target and be able to put it in center mass without trying to, like you do at the range, trying to aim. You want to get it up there quick. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because I believe from that day on, when we started doing that, I got to tell you, our range qualifications went from high 90s down into the low 90s. But over time, as people practiced, we came back up again, and everybody was doing point shooting. So I think that's great. So
the old slowly squeeze the trigger till the round goes off. That's a surprise to you. How many times have we all heard that in training? And it's ridiculous, because that doesn't happen in real life.
Right. So, Mike, I got to thank you very much for being here. So your books are on Blue 360 Media, Advanced Patrol Tactics and Advanced Vehicle Stops. I think the points that you made are excellent. I'm going to tell everybody, we all learn. Go to Blue 360 Media, look up Mike's books, get the books for yourself, get better at what you do, because it could save your life, save somebody else's life. Now, Mike, you have a bunch of combat gunfighting. I mean, you're a gun guy out there. Combat shotgun, urban tactical rifle. That's actually something to get into at some point in the future, because, we're all starting to carry the M4s and the M16s and all that stuff on our cars, and you got to be good with that. I think it's a good weapon. But, Mike, do you have a website people go to?
CombatGunfighting.com.
CombatGunfighting.com, and that's Mike Rayburn, and you'll find his books on Blue 360 Media, our sponsor here, and also my publisher. So, Mike, I want to thank you for being here, and we'll catch up with you down the road, because there's a lot of things to go through here, and the more I learn about you, the more I'm going to ask you questions.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right. So this is our interview today, Mike Rayburn, right? Go take a look at his books. Go look at Blue 360. This is Lieutenant Joe telling you, hey, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem.